He could be the next Conor McGregor star.
I want that world title. All laugh all you want and say I'll never be champ. You gang of mushrooms.
Like that kind of a star where the whole
He
world's
has
watching.
that weird personality.
Yes.
Yeah, he has that.
Well, he's very disarming because people, they see, I talked about this in the last pay-per-view. I said it's a very sneaky trick because guys like you look at you, the way you carry yourself, the way you, that's a fighter. Like you look at that guy's a dangerous motherfucker. But when you see Paddy, he's dancing like this, his hair is flopping around like he's in the Beatles. You know, he's like, he seems silly, but then he fucks people up.
When this fight was made, there was a lot of talk about how is it an interim title, but the number one contender isn't in this fight. I mean, I don't expect you to have any sympathy for Arman Tsarukyan, but you know, were you surprised that you could make this interim title without him in it?
No, he's bored. Don't really know anyone who wants to see Arman Tsarukyan fight. I listed so many reasons why he hasn't got this title shot in an interview the other week. You know what I mean? Like, pulled out on a day's notice when he said he had a bad back, when he never. He just couldn't make weight, ruined the main event. Punched the fan walking out of the cage. Probably cost the UFC a lot more money. Nearly ruined another main event for the first fight in Qatar by headbutting Dan Hooker. Like, just don't be a little spoiled brat and you might end up getting in good graces. It's his own fault, lad. It's his own family's fault for letting him be a spoiled little baby his whole life, lad, because he's got money. You know what I mean? He thinks that he can just like pay his way out of anything. Well, nah, lad, you got told you've got to work your way back to the title. And beating Dan Hooker, who can't grapple to save his life, doesn't do that. You know what I mean? But it is funny because he's left out in the cold now because Charles is fighting Max and I'm fighting Justin. And like, the next person down the rankings is Dan Hooker, who he's just beat. You know what I mean? He's going to have to rematch Gamrot or something and try and beat Gamrot. Because for now, nobody gives a flying about Arman Tsarukyan.
Does it not confuse things though? Because we've got this ranking system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does it not confuse things? Well, I don't expect you to care about this, but for fans, people watching in, people trying to understand the sport, if we've got rankings, the number one guy's not in the interim title, should we just scrap the rankings?
I don't know, that's up to everyone else. It's not up to me. I got told I'm fighting for the belt against Justin Gaethje and I said yeah. It's not my fault. Arman Tsarukyan's an absolute sausage.
No, it's not.
It's not my fault he can't control his emotions and start headbutting people at weigh-ins and pulling out the night before fights and hitting fans when he's walking out. That's not on me, that's on him. And he knows why he's not fighting for the belt. He needs to stop about it.
I feel like you pretty early on, well maybe straight away actually, when you moved into the UFC, you worked out the things they like, the things they don't like, and you know where that line is and you never cross it.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory, you know what I mean? You don't want you to headbutt people at weigh-ins and ruin the event for the next day. You don't want you to punch fans when you're walking out. They don't want you to pull out of a fight, a main event, the first card of the year, pay-per-view, the night before because you've got a bad back. When we all know he never had a bad back. He just his undies.
Did he?
Yeah.
That seems such a hard thing to get my head around. I think a lot of people would find it as well. Like, we know what you guys are made of.
And he was doing all stupid the day before, lad. Doing all mad rollovers and that. Like, there was nothing wrong with his back. He just didn't feel right or wasn't going to make weight. You know what I mean? He himself. Simple as.
There is a specific kind of magnetism that surrounds a fighter who transcends the sport, a gravitational pull that feels less like athletic appreciation and more like cult fanaticism. We have seen it before in Dublin, and we're seeing it now in Liverpool. The comparison to Conor McGregor is the low-hanging fruit of MMA journalism, yet when you look at Paddy Pimblett...
The story is that this made headlines for something that we were already told a couple of weeks ago, and there is no escalation from that, meaning Ilia Topuria is not vanquishing or having stripped from him.
It becomes impossible to ignore the echoes of that same chaotic rise. He possesses that weird personality, the kind that cannot be manufactured in a PR meeting. It is an authenticity that disarms opponents and confuses critics. They look at him, with a mop of hair flopping around like he just walked off the set of a Beatles documentary, dancing and smiling, and they see weakness. They see a frame that doesn't look like the granite chisel destroyers they are used to. They see silliness. But that visual deception is his greatest weapon. It is a sneaky trick, a camouflage of charisma that hides a violent intent. Fighters look at a terrifying physical specimen and their guard goes up immediately. They respect the danger. But when they see Paddy, they relax, they scoff, they laugh, and then, inevitably, they wake up staring at the lights or tapping out. This specific moment in his career, however, feels different. The laughter has died down, replaced by the stark reality of a world title fight. The skepticism that has dogged his every step, the chorus of voices claiming he would never be champion, that he was merely a hype train destined to derail, is facing its final test. Pimblett hears them. He calls them a gang of mushrooms, a dismissal as unique as his vernacular. He is fully aware of the whispers and the shouts, but his focus has narrowed to a singular point: the gold belt. The upcoming clash for the interim title against Justin Gaethje is not just a fight, it is a collision of timelines. It is the meeting of a man who believes he is just starting to accelerate against a legend who has spent a lifetime in the fire. When this fight was announced, the narrative was immediately clouded by the politics of the rankings. Pundits and fans alike looked at the numbers and asked the obvious question: how is this an interim title fight when the #1 contender, Arman Tsarukyan, is nowhere to be found? It is a valid question for those obsessed with the spreadsheet logic of the sport, but for Pimblett, the answer is rooted in a harsh reality that has nothing to do with fairness and everything to do with business. He offers absolutely no sympathy for the absent contender. In his eyes, Tsarukyan is not a victim of circumstance, but a casualty of his own behavior. Pimblett describes him with a level of disdain that suggests this isn't just about rankings, it's about professionalism. He views Arman as bored, a fighter that nobody is truly clamoring to see, a void of charisma in a sport that sells stories. Pimblett's critique of the #1 contender is a brutal itemization of errors. He lists the reasons like a prosecutor reading a charge sheet. He points to the moment Arman pulled out of a fight on a day's notice, citing a bad back. To Pimblett, and perhaps to the UFC brass, this was a cardinal sin. He is convinced the injury was a fabrication, a convenient excuse for a weight cut gone wrong or a crisis of confidence. Ruining a main event, leaving the promoter scrambling and the fans shortchanged, is a strike that is hard to erase. Then there are the emotional outbursts, punching a fan while walking out of the cage, a moment of indiscipline that likely cost the organization a fortune in legal headaches and bad press. He brings up the incident in Qatar, the headbutting of Dan Hooker, nearly ruining yet another main event. To Pimblett, these aren't accidents. They are the tantrums of a spoiled brat. He paints a picture of a man who has been coddled, someone whose family money has allowed him to buy his way out of trouble his whole life, leading to a sense of entitlement that the fight game simply does not respect. The verdict Pimblett delivers on Tsarukyan is scathing. It is his own fault. It is the fault of his upbringing, the fault of his inability to control his emotions. You cannot simply pay your way out of the consequences in the cage or the consequences of the business. You are told to work your way back, and beating a striker who cannot grapple to save his life, referencing the Dan Hooker fight, does not constitute earning a title shot in Pimblett's eyes. The irony, as Paddy points out, is that the landscape has shifted underneath Arman's feet. He is left out in the cold. With Charles Oliveira fighting Max Holloway and Pimblett fighting Gaethje, the rankings have become fluid. The man Arman just beat is the next one down the ladder, leaving him in a purgatory of his own making, forced to perhaps rematch someone like Gamrot just to stay relevant. For now, in the eyes of the man fighting for the gold, nobody gives a flying thought about the #1 contender. This situation does raise a fundamental question about the integrity of the ranking system. If the numbers 1 through 5 are mere suggestions rather than a strict cue, does it confuse the sport for the fans trying to follow along? If the #1 guy isn't fighting for the interim belt, should the rankings be scrapped entirely? Pimblett's response to this is a masterclass in pragmatic indifference. He tells the world that it is not his job to organize the queue. That is up to everyone else. His role is simple. He was told he is fighting for the belt against Justin Gaethje, and he said yes. It is not his fault that Tsarukyan is, in his colorful words, an absolute sausage. It is not his fault that the man cannot console his emotions, that he headbutts people at weigh-ins, that he pulls out the night before fights. Pimblett washes his hands of the controversy. The blame, he insists, lies squarely on the shoulders of the man watching from home. Arman knows why he isn't fighting for the belt, and he needs to stop complaining about it. This attitude reveals a deeper layer of Pimblett's intelligence. From the moment he stepped into the UFC, he seemed to download the unwritten rulebook of the organization. He deciphered what the executives like, what they despise, and exactly where the line is drawn. It is self-explanatory to him, a common sense that seems to elude his rivals. The promoters do not want you to headbutt opponents at weigh-ins and jeopardize the event. They do not want you assaulting paying customers. They do not want you collapsing the main event of a pay-per-view, especially the first card of the year, because you claim a bad back when everyone suspects you just couldn't make the weight. It is baffling to Pimblett that this is a hard concept for others to grasp. He recalls seeing Tsarukyan doing wild physical maneuvers the day before the cancellation, rolling over and moving in ways that made a back injury seem impossible. In Pimblett's mind, the man simply didn't feel right or knew the scale would beat him, and he chose the easy way out. The UFC is not a place that rewards that kind of fragility. In reality, Pimblett suggests, Arman is lucky to still have a contract, let alone be in the conversation for a belt. While he dismisses the number one contender with contempt, his view of his actual opponent, Justin Gaethje, is a complex mix of reverence and ruthlessness. He acknowledges the violence Gaethje brings, the legendary status he has carved out of flesh and bone. But this respect is a Trojan horse. He praises Gaethje only to frame his own victory as a generational changing of the guard. Pimblett believes he is going to retire Justin Gaethje. He says it with a heavy heart, claiming it feels bad to say, but the conviction is absolute. He views Gaethje as a man on the precipice, standing on the edge of the cliff that every fighter eventually falls off. Gaethje himself has spoken about his time remaining in the sport, and Pimblett intends to be the one to close the book. This is the confidence of a fighter who operates on a different biological clock. Pimblett speaks of his own physical maturity as something that arrived late. He notes that he didn't even grow chest hair until he was 23, a quirky biological marker he uses to insist that he hasn't even hit his prime yet. While Gaethje has been in wars, absorbing damage and delivering chaos, Pimblett feels fresh. He feels that his best years are incoming, while his opponent's best years are preserved on highlight reels of the past. He acknowledges that Gaethje is a boxer with leg kicks, a chaos merchant who loves a firefight. Pimblett, by contrast, classifies himself as a true MMA striker. He doesn't just do boxing or Thai boxing. He blends it all. He is prepared to meet the violence with a diversity of violence that he believes Gaethje cannot handle. There is a terrifying calmness in how he invites the war. Gaethje is famous for dragging opponents into deep water and drowning them in adrenaline and blood. Most fighters try to avoid that storm. They try to outpoint or wrestle Gaethje to safety. Pimblett, however, claims he has never had a war in all his years of fighting. He has been waiting for one. He wants the fire. He wants the test. It is a bold, perhaps reckless, desire, but it underscores his belief that he is untouchable. He predicts that people will be shocked, that they will say, "Wow, he wasn't lying."